The galaxy is a loud place, if you have the ears to listen. It is filled with the screaming of pulsars, the whisper of nebulae, and the ceaseless chatter of 1,000 civilizations vying for dominance. But there is one silence that is louder than all of them. It is a silence found in the galactographic charts of the Draconian Empire, a blank space where a fleet of 4,000 ships, the pride of the high hegemony, simply ceased to exist. This is not a story of a diplomatic misunderstanding. This is not a story of peace treaties signed in ink and starlight. This is the story of the Tartarus sector, and why, after the invasion of the Sol system, the rest of the galaxy learned to leave humanity alone. It began on a Tuesday, by Earth reckoning. The Draconian High Fleet, known as the Talons of the Void, dropped out of hyperspace just beyond the orbit of Pluto. Their arrival tore the fabric of local spacetime. Gravimetric sensors across the Sol system screamed and died. The Draconians did not send a message. They did not ask for surrender. They were the apex predators of the Orion Arm, a species of hulking, scaled conquerors who believed that the weak existed solely to sustain the strong. To them, humanity was not a rival. Humanity was a resource. Grand Admiral Zarthos stood upon the bridge of the Sovereign's Will, a dreadnought the size of a small moon. Its hull was a sleek obsidian teardrop, powered by a singularity core that hummed with the energy of a captured star. Zarthos looked at the holographic display of the human system. It was pitiful. A single inhabited garden world, a few terraformed colonies on a red dust ball, and a scattered collection of orbital habitats. Their fleet was barely worth the name. Ships made of welded plates and chemical rockets, vessels that looked like flying bricks compared to the elegant curves of draconian engineering. Zarthos clicked his mandibles in amusement. He turned to his tactical officer. Burn the outer habitats, drive them inward, herd them toward their blue world. We will harvest the population there. The invasion began with surgical precision. Draconian lancers swept through the outer belts, vaporizing human mining outposts. The human response was chaotic. Distress signals flooded the spectrum. The United Earth Navy mobilized, but their ships were slow, their weapons primitive railguns and nuclear missiles that the draconian point defense lasers swatted out of the sky with ease. For 3 days, it was a slaughter. The human line collapsed. The remnants of the Earth fleet, battered and bleeding, turned their engines away from Earth and fled. But they didn't flee into deep space. They didn't scatter. They ran toward the Tartarus sector. The Tartarus sector was a stellar anomaly, a region of space colloquially known to humans as the Boneyard. It was a dense, turbulent nebula, filled with ionized gas, free-floating asteroids, and magnetic storms so violent they could strip the shielding off a starship in minutes. It was a navigational nightmare. It was a place where sensors went blind and communications died. And it was exactly where the humans went. Zarthos watched the retreating human fleet, about 300 ships, limping and leaking plasma, disappear into the swirling ochre mists of the nebula. He sneered. They think the clouds will hide them. They think we will not follow because of a little static. He keyed the fleet-wide comms. All ships. Pursuit formation. The prey has run into a dead end. We will dig them out, ship by ship. Do not let a single human vessel escape. The Draconian fleet, 4,000 strong, engines burning with blue-white fire, turned in unison and plunged into the Tartarus sector. The transition was instant. The moment the Sovereign's will crossed the threshold of the nebula, the universe changed. The crisp, clean black of space was replaced by a suffocating, churning fog of heavy metals and gas. The view screens were washed out in static. The tactical grid flickered and vanished. "Report!" Zarthos barked, his voice echoing in the sudden silence of the bridge. The sensor officer, a younger Draconian whose scales were pale with anxiety, frantically tapped at his console. "Admiral, long-range sensors are down. Short range is operating at 20% efficiency. The magnetic interference, it's like nothing we've ever seen. It is jamming our targeting computers." "Compensate," Zarthos roared. "We have the most advanced technology in the galaxy. Filter out the noise. Find the humans." But the humans were nowhere to be seen. The fleet pushed deeper. The nebula was thick, almost viscous. It pressed against the shields, a constant grinding pressure. The Draconian ships, designed for the open void where they could engage at thousands of kilometers, found themselves flying blind in a dense fog, unable to see more than a few ship lengths in any direction. Formation tightness was increased. The fleet bunched up, fearful of losing one another in the gloom. An hour passed, then two, then the first ship died. It wasn't a battleship. It was a destroyer on the starboard flank, the Fang of Ka. There was no explosion, no flash of light. The captain of the Fang had been reporting a fluctuation in his reactor shielding, and then, mid-sentence, the comms link simply cut to white noise. Zarthos stared at the blank spot on the proximity grid. "Status of the Fang. Gone, Admiral." The sensor officer's voice trembled. "Just gone." Before Zarthos could respond, another signal vanished. A frigate on the port side, then another. "They are attacking," Zarthos realized. "But how? We detect no energy spikes, no plasma signatures. That was the mistake of the Draconian Empire. They assumed warfare was a matter of energy. Beams, shields, plasma, heat. They had forgotten the ancient, brutal physics of kinetic impact. Deep in the fog, the humans had killed their engines. They were running cold. No reactors, just battery power. They were drifting with the currents of the nebula, indistinguishable from the thousands of asteroids floating around them. And they weren't using lasers. They were using railguns. A tungsten slug, fired from a magnetic rail at a fraction of light speed, does not emit a thermal bloom until it hits something. In the magnetic chaos of the Tartarus sector, a railgun shot was invisible. The Sovereign's will shook violently. A metallic clang reverberated through the hull, loud enough to be heard over the hum of the air scrubbers. "Shields holding," shouted the tactical officer. "But we took a kinetic impact, a solid projectile." "Return fire," Zarthos commanded. "At what?" the officer cried out. "There is nothing there." The Draconian fleet began to panic. Captains, blind and terrified, ordered their gunners to fire into the mist. Lances of green plasma tore through the nebula, boiling the gas, creating pockets of superheated steam, but hitting nothing but rock and dust. The humans, however, did not miss. They were not relying on high-tech sensors. They were using localized LiDAR and passive sonar, bouncing sound waves off the hulls of the enemy through the thickening gas. They were fighting like submarines in a dark ocean. Another Draconian cruiser exploded, this time visible through the fog as a blossoming flower of orange fire. The explosion illuminated the silhouette of a human ship for just a second. A blocky, ugly thing, heavily armored, drifting silently past the wreckage. "It's an ambush," Zarthos hissed. "They lured us in. All ships full reverse. Get us out of this soup." But it was too late. As the Draconian fleet tried to turn, the nebula itself seemed to weaponize. The humans had deployed mines. Not proximity mines, but contact mines, millions of them seeded in the cloud. As the alien ships turned, their shields brushing against the magnetic storms, they slammed into the silent explosives. Chaos erupted. The tightly packed formation became a death trap. Ships collided with one another in the panic. Shields failed under the barrage of kinetic slugs, and nuclear-tipped torpedoes fired from point-blank range. Zarthos watched his screen as the fleet integrity dropped by 15% in minutes. This was impossible. These were primates, mud-dwellers. How were they dismantling the Grand Fleet? The answer came from a transmission. It broke through the static, overriding the draconian frequency encryption with brute force. It wasn't a plea for mercy. It was a song. A rhythmic, heavy, thumping sound filled the bridge of the Sovereign's will. It was crude, aggressive, industrial music, human heavy metal. And underneath the grinding guitars, a voice spoke. Not a diplomat, but a soldier. "This is Admiral Sarah Cole of the UNSC Hephaestus. Welcome to the Anvil, boys. You brought the metal, we brought the hammers." Zarthos slammed his fist onto the console. "Triangulate that signal. Burn them." "We have a lock," yelled the tactical officer. "Sector 47. Fire everything. The Sovereign's will." Unleashed a barrage of antimatter torpedoes into the dark. The explosion was blinding, clearing a hole in the nebula for a brief second. There was nothing there. Just a relay buoy broadcasting the signal. It was a decoy. While the Draconians focused on the signal, the real attack began. The humans weren't just shooting, they were boarding. Drop pods, crude coffin-shaped missiles made of lead and ceramic, punched through the weakened shields of the Draconian capital ships. They slammed into the hulls, magnetic clamps locking on. Thermite charges burned through the armor plating. On the lower decks of the Sovereign's will, alarms screamed. Zarthos pulled up the internal security feeds. What he saw chilled his cold blood. Humans. They were clad in bulky, pressurized void armor, wielding automatic shotguns and magnetic boarding axes. They moved with a speed and ferocity that defied logic. The Draconian soldiers, tall and slender, relied on personal energy shields and precision plasma pistols. But inside the corridors of a dying ship, amidst venting steam and flickering gravity, precision meant nothing. The humans were using flashbangs and fragmentation grenades. They fought dirty. They fought angry. Zarthos watched a squad of his elite guards get torn apart by 3 humans in a narrow hallway. The humans didn't stop when they were hit. Their armor absorbed the plasma burns, and they kept coming. One human, his helmet visor cracked, tackled a Draconian warrior and drove a combat knife into the alien's throat. "They are monsters," Zarthos whispered. The battle raged for 12 hours. The nebula, once dark, was now lit by the burning wreckage of hundreds of alien ships. The Draconian fleet was dissolving. Command and control had completely broken down. It was every ship for itself. Zarthos tried to rally the survivors. "Form a sphere. Defensive phalanx. We must hold until we can calculate a jump solution." But the humans denied them even that. The human flagship, the Hephaestus, finally revealed itself. It rose from the depths of a gas giant's gravity well, a massive, uglier behemoth than the rest. It didn't fire weapons. Instead, it activated a device on its prow, a massive magnetic field disruptor, jury-rigged from a terraforming engine. The device sent a pulse through the nebula. It didn't damage the ships directly. Instead, it destabilized the singularity cores of the Draconian vessels. The finely tuned, elegant power sources of the aliens began to wobble. Containment fields fluctuated. To prevent a breach, the Draconian safety systems automatically engaged emergency shutdowns. In an instant, the Grand Fleet went dark. 4,000 ships, the pinnacle of galactic technology, were reduced to drifting hulks. No engines, no shields, no weapons, just emergency lighting and life support. The silence returned. But this time, it was the silence of the grave. Zarthos stood on his bridge, bathed in the red glow of the emergency lights. His console was dead. His empire, light years away, would not know he had failed. They would only know he never came back. He looked out the viewport. Through the thinning fog, he saw them, the human ships. They were closing in. They looked like sharks circling a wounded whale. They were attaching towing cables. They weren't destroying the fleet. They were capturing it. The airlock to the bridge hissed. Sparks flew as a cutting torch burned through the heavy blast doors. Zarthos drew his ceremonial plasma blade. He would die as a warrior. He would take as many of these savages with him as he could. The door fell inward with a heavy clang. Through the smoke stepped a human figure. The armor was scarred and scorched, painted in matte gray. The figure held a kinetic rifle loosely in one hand. Behind the human, more soldiers poured in, securing the bridge crew. The leader stepped forward, retracting their helmet. It was a woman, older, with gray hair cut short and a scar running down her cheek. She looked tired. She didn't look like a conqueror. She looked like a janitor who had just finished a very messy job. She looked at the Grand Admiral of the Draconian hegemony, then at the plasma sword in his hand. She didn't raise her rifle. She just sighed. "Put the glow stick away, Admiral," she said, her voice raspy. "You're done." "I demand," Zarthos hissed, his translation collar struggling to interpret his rage, "to speak to your Emperor. I will not surrender to a pirate." The woman chuckled. It was a dry, humorless sound. "We don't have an emperor. We have a president, but he's busy filing paperwork. I'm Admiral Cole, and you're not surrendering. You're being salvaged." "Salvaged?" Zarthos stepped forward. "We are the High Fleet. We are the Talons of the Void." "You're scrap metal," Cole said flatly. "Look out the window. Your fancy cores couldn't handle the static. Your shields failed against rocks. Your targeting computers got confused by dust. You built a fleet for a parade, Admiral. We built a fleet for a bar fight." She gestured to her Marines. "Cuff him. And be careful with the scales. I hear they're sharp." Zarthos was brought to his knees. "Why?" he asked, genuine confusion breaking through his pride. "Why bring us here? Why fight in the dark?" Cole leaned in close. "Because out there, in the open, you're faster, stronger, and better looking. But in here, in the mud and the blood and the dark, that's where humanity lives. You stepped into our house, pal. And in our house, we don't play by the rules of physics. We play by the rules of survival." The Draconian fleet never left the Tartarus sector. Weeks turned into months. The galaxy waited for news. The Draconian High Command sent scout ships to the edge of the Sol system, but they found nothing. The nebula was silent. The human transmissions had ceased. It was as if the invasion had simply evaporated. Rumors began to spread. Some said the humans had a superweapon. Some said they had made a pact with demons. The Draconian Empire, terrified by the total disappearance of their greatest armada, pulled back their borders. They declared the Sol system a forbidden zone. They marked the star charts with a simple warning: "Here there be monsters." But the truth was far more practical. Deep within the Tartarus sector, the forges of humanity were burning brighter than ever. The captured Draconian ships were not destroyed. They were stripped. Human engineers, displaying that terrifying ingenuity that comes from desperation, tore the alien technology apart. They cracked the code of the singularity cores. They reverse-engineered the plasma lances. They took the sleek obsidian hulls of the Draconian dreadnoughts and welded their own brutal, blocky armor plates onto them. The Sovereign's will was renamed the UNSC Indomitable. Its elegant bridge was retrofitted with analog controls and manual overrides. Its clean white corridors were scuffed by combat boots and stained with engine grease. Humanity didn't just survive the invasion, they absorbed it. They ate the invasion fleet whole and grew stronger from the meal. 5 years later, a pirate fleet from the Zygnian cartel decided to raid a human colony on the edge of the sector. They expected weak resistance. They expected railguns and nuclear missiles. What they got was a nightmare. Out of the nebula emerged a ship. It had the silhouette of a Draconian dreadnought, but it moved with the aggressive thrust of human engines. It was covered in jagged armor, painted in shark-mouth nose art and hazard stripes. The pirates hailed the vessel, confused. "Identify yourself." The reply came on an open channel. "This is the Terran Confederation warship, Bad Moon Rising. You have 10 seconds to power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. If you run, we will catch you. If you fight, we will break you." The pirates ran, but they didn't get far. The Bad Moon Rising opened fire, not with clumsy missiles, but with precision plasma beams, beams that burned red instead of the draconian green, overcharged and unstable, hitting with twice the force. The galaxy learned a valuable lesson that day. You can beat humanity in a race. You can beat them in a debate. You can even beat them in a fair fight. But never, ever back them into a corner. And certainly, never follow them into the dark. Because when you gaze into the abyss, sometimes the abyss gazes back. And sometimes the abyss is holding a shotgun and wearing a grin that says it has absolutely nothing left to lose. The Draconian Empire eventually collapsed, not from war, but from fear. The legend of the lost fleet haunted them. They crumbled from within, paralyzed by the thought of what waited for them in the Sol system. And on Earth? The anniversary of the Battle of Tartarus isn't a solemn occasion. It's a festival. They launch fireworks. They drink. They tell stories. Grand Admiral Zarthos is there too. He didn't die. He spent 10 years in a prisoner of war camp, tending a garden in Arizona. Eventually, he was released. He didn't go home. He couldn't. He opened a small tactical consultancy firm in Chicago. He writes memoirs. He tells anyone who will listen about the day the dragon tried to eat the wolf and choked. He sits in a park sometimes, looking up at the night sky. He sees the stars, and he knows that up there, drifting in the void, are ships that once belonged to him, now crewed by the children of the mud. He watches a young human child playing with a toy spaceship. The child runs around, making swooshing noises, crashing the toy into a rock, then picking it up, dusting it off, and flying it again. Zarthos smiles, a rare, terrifying expression on his reptilian face. Resilient, he mutters to himself. Stubborn, madness. He picks up his datapad and continues writing his latest chapter. He titles it, The Art of Fighting in a Sack. The galaxy is vast, filled with ancient empires and godlike technologies. But the humans? They are the ones you watch. They are the ones who look at a wall and see a door. They are the ones who look at a fleet of 4,000 dreadnoughts and see a salvage opportunity. So, if you are ever traveling through the Orion Arm and you see a nebula that looks like a bruise on the face of the universe, steer clear. Don't scan it. Don't hail it. Just turn around and fly the other way. Because the humans are in there. And they are very, very protective of their dark. But if you must go, if you are foolish enough to enter human space, remember the one rule that the Draconians learned too late. When you enter the human jungle, don't look for the lion. The lion has dignity. The lion roars before it strikes. Look for the badger. Look for the creature that is too small to care about odds and too angry to know when it is dead. That is humanity, and that is why the fleet entered and never left. This is the end of the recording. The interrogation of former Admiral Zarthos, transcript 409. Interrogator: Tell us about the ghost ships, Admiral. Zarthos: There were no ghosts. That is a story for hatchlings. There was only mechanics. Interrogator: Mechanics? Zarthos: Yes. You humans treat machines like pets, like companions. We treated them like tools. When a Draconian ship is damaged, the AI assesses the efficiency of repair. If the cost outweighs the benefit, the ship is scuttled. Logic, pure logic. Interrogator: And us? Zarthos: I saw a human engineer, a female, weeping over a broken piston on the Indomitable. She was bleeding from a head wound. The hull was breached. Oxygen was low. By all logic, she should have evacuated. Instead, she was talking to the engine, coaxing it, promising it better fuel if it just held together for 5 more minutes. Interrogator: Did it? Zarthos: Of course it did, because your machines are insane, just like you. You imbue them with your own stubborn spirit. You refuse to let things die. That is why you won. We fought with math. You fought with belief. Interrogator: Is that why you stayed? Because of belief? Zarthos: I stayed because I wanted to understand. I spent 400 years studying warfare. I memorized the Sun Tzu, the Clausewitz, the Groxhide scrolls of Kalthar. But none of them wrote about fixing a hyperdrive with a roll of adhesive tape and a kick. Interrogator: It's called percussive maintenance, Admiral. Zarthos: Percussive maintenance. Yes. I have adopted this technique. My toaster was malfunctioning this morning. I struck it. It now functions perfectly. I fear I am becoming one of you. Interrogator: Welcome to Earth, Zarthos. Zarthos: Thank you. Now, if you will excuse me, I have a poker game with Admiral Cole. I believe she intends to cheat. I look forward to it. The legacy of the Tartarus sector wasn't just the victory. It was the shift in galactic perspective. Before the Draconian incident, humans were considered a minor, annoying species, loud, dirty, and fractured. After, they were the species that made a hegemony vanish. The captured technology jump-started human evolution by 1,000 years. FTL drives were improved, not to be faster, but to be more robust. Shields were thickened, but the aesthetic remained. Human ships never adopted the sleek curves of the aliens. They remained angular, industrial, covered in antennas and radiators. They looked like what they were: working ships. And the Draconian survivors, those who weren't high command, they were integrated. It wasn't smooth. There were riots. There was hatred. But humanity has a unique superpower, one often overlooked in favor of their violence. Humanity will pack bond with anything. Give it a generation, and the Draconian ex-soldiers were working on the docks of Mars. Their strength made them excellent heavy lifters. Their heat vision made them perfect welders. They complained about the cold, and the humans knit them giant wool sweaters. It was absurd. It was ridiculous. It was working. 50 years after the invasion, a combined human-Draconian crew on the exploration vessel. 2 left hands made first contact with the Andromedan hive mind. The hive mind was terrified. It scanned the ship and saw 2 species that should have been mortal enemies, sitting in a mess hall, eating synthesized protein paste, and arguing about sports. The hive mind asked, "How is this possible? The predator and the prey coexisting?" The human captain, a descendant of those who fought in the nebula, shrugged. "We figured out that they make really good spicy soup, and they figured out that we know how to fix the air conditioning." The Draconian first officer nodded solemnly. "The soup is superior. The air conditioning is adequate." The hive mind retreated. It decided that any galaxy where enemies bonded over soup and climate control was too chaotic to invade, and so peace reigned. A peace built on the bones of 4,000 dead ships, forged in the dark of a nebula, and sealed with duct tape and spicy soup. The galaxy is still loud, but when a human ship enters a system looking like a flying junkyard and broadcasting classic rock on all frequencies, everyone else quiets down. Not out of fear, necessarily, but out of respect. Because everyone knows the story. They know about the fleet that went in, and the monsters that came out. And they know that if you push the humans too far, they won't just beat you. They'll adopt you, fix your toaster, and teach you how to play poker. And that, truly, is the most terrifying fate of all.